Welcome to Tone Talks. How's everybody doing today? This is Antonio Moore coming to you from Tone Talks. Coming today to discuss my new article that came out in response to Ta-Nehisi Coates' piece on the Atlantic, the first white president. You know, I did a response on Huffington Post. Donald Trump is not the first white president, and he won't be the last. In that reply, what I'm dealing with is so many things that I see as problems with not only Ta-Nehisi Coates' view of Donald Trump, but this larger argument that really doesn't take Trump in context of greater whiteness. In no way am I showing this as support for Trump. This is more about Black America framing its political dialogue in a correct light so that we actually get to the root of things rather than messing around the fringes and getting caught up in hype rather than actual substantive things that will move our dialogue forward. So let's start off by saying that I'm not here to do a takedown of Coates, but I'm more so dealing with Coates in context of his recent works. I commend him on the piece that he did for reparations for the Atlantic. It was powerful work, and I've actually quoted it myself. But as we move forward, I believe in many ways the journalism lost its luster as he fell in love with Barack Obama. And in many instances, what you see from the My President Was Black piece to this first white president piece is this attempt to stretch the truth, and stretch the truth to the point where it isn't altogether correct or accurate. I should say my good friend Sandy Darity also did a piece on the Atlantic, being very critical of Barack Obama and Ta-Nehisi Coates' My President Was Black piece, because it just wasn't accurate by the data. We have a new research piece coming out about the myths behind the racial wealth gap, but I think for us to understand the first white president piece, we have to understand Coates' My President Was Black piece and understand that, individuals are not the same as administrations. And here we have this reality front and center with Obama, and we have to look at Obama honestly. And I did that in my piece, and I'll share that as we get along in the video. Obama's administration was not this panacea for Black America the way it's being presented, the way it's being remembered. Great photos, but when we look back, the data shows us very hard realities that African Americans slid back, 50-year low in home ownership, 1.8% of SBA loans, while it was 8% under George Bush. Under Republican George Bush, we had 8% of the small business loans. Under Obama, it went down to 1.8%. And we have to start looking at this thing and getting honest about the rise of Uber, getting honest about the fact that you had Arnie Duncan race to the top, led to so many Black teachers feeling pressured. We saw prosecutions of Black teachers in Atlanta. We saw closures of schools in Chicago. We saw charter schools open up and basically place Black America in secondary schooling all throughout Detroit. And we got to say this all happened under a Black president. So, what I want to do, to be fair, is to look at the first white president piece. And what I see when I look at that piece, and I'm pulling it up right here, Coates attempts to make Trump the face of white, supremacy, of white nationalism in my view, and he's far from it. Is he activating it? Is he using it? Yes, but I don't think that this He-Man Skeletor view of Trump or Obama does any kind of service to our dialogue that's needed, nor is it actually historically accurate. I didn't play with them toys like He-Man and Skeletor and talismans and amulets and stuff. I want to talk in real data. And when we look at the data, what we see is that, you can't call Trump the first white president in a country like America. I note this. I talk about, we had Van Jones basically saying when Trump brought up George Washington, how could he be mentioned? Here's a guy in George Washington who had 317 slaves, and chased one slave to the end of his life or her life for years because she had escaped. And Andrew Johnson, we have somebody who set black people back an unknown amount of advantage by not allowing in 1866 for us to have civil rights. What would have happened if Black America was allowed civil rights in 1866? In Richard Nixon, we have somebody institute the war on drugs and also come up with the whole plan to use the white vote to win the presidency. Trump is just more of the same. He's not new. He's next in line. And I think for a lot of us, because we're so sensationalized, particularly the social media millennial era, that we don't actually have any kind of historical memory. And Coates is playing on that. You can't call him the first white president. As we look at Trump and this accusation of him being the first white president, what I think is starting to happen is he's becoming an escape for white people dealing with whiteness. What do I mean? When we look at the data, when we look at the wealth data, there's 80 million white homes, and half are worth more than $110,000, 40 million homes. 23 million are worth 30%, are worth more than $350. 20% are worth more than $500,000. 10% are worth more than $1.4 million. And what largely creates that advantage is whiteness. It's not top 1% that just benefits from whiteness. It digs 60% deep into the race. And what starts to happen is that by demonizing Trump, we don't deal with the reality of whiteness as a whole, from prison gerrymandering to incarceration to poverty to unemployment to all the realities behind like black failure today need to be dealt with from a policy level. The individuals that benefit. And I think that for what I wanted to do in my piece is spread out this criticism, because I think there's a criticism there that Coates could have took on, but it's not the one that he actually tried to argue. He tried to make Trump into Skeletor. I don't know, he played with a lot of toys or something, because he started talking about amulets and magic and all kind of things. This is not magic. This is real. This is real for me. And so, like, when you start talking about magic, you make people think that if we end Trump's presidency, somehow everything will be better. That if we had elected Hillary Clinton instead of Trump, somehow things will be better. That if black people just fell in line, things will be better. And I would argue differently. We need transformative politics. And I think that in so many instances, what we need to do is demand that whiteness be given back. I don't think we really want to deal with the contextualization of how whiteness relies on there being a blackness. On the reason behind why black men are at 10,000 per 100,000 incarcerated and white women are at 110 per 100,000. It's not just we are more prone to crime or live in poverty levels. We've made a decision as a society that this group can be thrown away. This group of black males. And what I wanted to do was lay out in this piece how Coates is wrong both in his view of Trump and his view of history. And Obama, of course. You look back at all these presidents. I'm gonna pull up an article right here that lays out the 10 most racist American presidents, and Trump isn't nearly on the list. I did a documentary called Freeway Cracking the System on the Iran-Contra. You can't not deal with George Bush Sr. and Reagan. You can't not deal with Nixon or Andrew Johnson. You can't deal with all the slave-owning presidents, including George Washington. And I think that, people will try to make the argument that he didn't mean it literally. Well, he literally made that into his title. Clickbait and all. And I think we have to own the context of how dangerous it is to allow whiteness to be brought into an individual. It's not an individual. It is a systemic use of oppression to basically keep institutions that have been in place for long periods of time and their benefits still in place. We don't want to be honest about that. Now, could he have argued that Trump is inciting white racism? Yeah, he absolutely could have. He could have, but that's not the first white president. What I want to do now is share the opening of my piece so you guys can get a context for how I wrote this thing. You can go Google it. Donald Trump isn't the first white president. He won't be the last. And here goes a section. I'm going to pull it up right here. Long before Trump was even a thought, we had presidents who leveraged their whiteness to inflict great amounts of pain upon black lives. From George Washington and the 317 slaves that undergirded his white wealth, to Andrew Johnson, who stood in the path of 100 years of black civil rights advancement in 1866, continuing with Richard Nixon and the modern Republican strategy of winning the presidency with the white vote. Donald Trump, with his threats of cuts to Medicaid, proposed pullbacks on education spending, and cuts to housing for the poor, is one person in a long line he hardly started and definitely will not end, to now repaint this billionaire opportunist as the face of white oppression is wading into dangerous historical water. It is tempting to conclude, given the weight of the evidence against his claim, that Ta-Nehisi Coates went with the first white president line because it's clever. It calls back to Bill Clinton's dubious title coined by Toni Morrison of the first black president, which we can now look back on and question with much more in-depth analysis. Yet, to call President Donald Trump anything is to give him power he has not earned and a place in history that etches his name far too high on the Mount Rushmore of America's racial failures. It's my firm belief that is a disrespect to all of the struggles and history that we went through to call this man the first white president. He's not first anything. He's a continuation. And we have to hold responsible both the system and individuals that benefit from the system for the fact that they benefit from whiteness. And we have to deconstruct whiteness if any movement of reparations or fairness or equity is going to actually take place. Check out my interview with Thomas Shapiro, author of Black Wealth, White Wealth. We had a great discussion about how that can happen, why, so much of the privilege went into white hands. It was a powerful discussion. I think one of the issues we have right now is we have far too many people in the kitchen. People that don't know enough about politics, don't know enough about wealth, don't know enough about blackness, speaking about all of it. Continue on, I start to look at this context of a destruction of Obama's legacy. It's interesting because there's this attempt to create contrast out of two individuals that in my view are very much parallels. When I look at Trump and Obama, they benefited greatly from legacy. On Trump's hand is his father having all of that wealth. On Obama's hand is his father going to Harvard, allowing him to have legacy admissions into Harvard. And so, in addition with the white grandmother that can leave him $500,000 in stock cash, in addition to having $1 million house that she lived in throughout his young life, it is the privileges of whiteness that tied these two men together. But more importantly, their meteoric rise came as a direct result of celebrity. Neither one of them were qualified. Obama was more qualified than Trump, I will say that. But neither one of them was qualified to be commander-in-chief. What allowed them to have a meteoric rise, in my view, was celebrity, notoriety, and fame. Without Obama, in my view, there is no Trump, because we don't have a framework for seeing the presidency through celebrity in such a way, the use of social media. Trump mastered the framework that Obama set out. And what we see is that in some ways we don't want to be honest about that all the Jay-Z dinners and Oprah hugs is what allowed us to allow Obama into our homes, because we didn't know who he was. And the same thing goes for Trump. And I'm going to share another section from my piece where I asked the question that nobody wants to ask. Did black celebrity play a role in us normalizing, accepting, or seeing Trump? Because you have to go back and understand. When they said Donald Trump is running for presidency, be honest, did you have to figure out who he was? No. From the Apprentice show to Hugs with Puffy to Serena Williams and the multiple events that she's attended, you knew who Trump was. That brand had a value already. Now, if we thought that he was a white supremacist, if we thought that he actually had all these views, we as African Americans had to do that for years, so that when this happened, everybody understood our position, meaning stand up against him. Even today, you don't hear black celebrity, you don't hear Puffy and Serena saying, this guy is a white supremacist. Everybody wants to get a check from the charity for their charity or for their event or for going to his event. Nah, we holding people accountable now. We not just gonna say it's the quote-unquote toothless white Trump supporter that got him in the office. Nah, black celebrity played a role. There's a great YouTube you can go look up. 67 times that rappers use Trump's name in rap songs. 67. Validating him about how how he's a great businessman. Super capitalism run amok. You know, black men, they ticked up and turned out for Trump in some level, higher than black females. Now, we don't know the reasoning, because we look at who the Democrats ran with Hillary Clinton and mass incarceration and her role, or her husband's role, or the Clinton administration's role, and we start to question how much of that was part of the black male uptick for Trump. But we also have to look at this reality of 67 rap songs with Trump's name in it. With the glorification of Trump, with Puff Daddy saying, oh, Trump is a friend. With Serena Williams dancing the night away 2015 in the New Year's Eve party. How did that play a role in this overall imagery, branding, valuation of Trump? It should never have existed if we really feel this way about Trump. And we gotta be honest and hold people's feet to the fire that made that exist. And so I want to share this section from my piece. Coates also grounds his argument by asserting Barack Obama's legacy is now being attacked. And this is a block quote from Coates' piece. Apologize for the language. But Donald Trump arrived in the wake of something more potent. An entire nigger presidency with nigger healthcare, nigger climate accords, and nigger justice reform, all of which could be targeted for destruction or redemption, thus reifying the idea of being white. Trump truly is something new, the first president whose entire political existence hinges on the fact of a black president. I just think that that's just a horrible statement. His presidency didn't hinge on undoing Obama. Obama hadn't done anything in terms of civil rights for black people. Very little. My Brother's Keeper was an unfunded kind of side project at the end to make black people be quiet. That incarceration thing, that wasn't real. I'm sorry. It was switching them from being in jail to being on anklets and essentially giving people who were going to get out anyway a chance to get out a little earlier. It wasn't real. You look at the rise of Uber, you look at Artie Duncan and Race to the Top and what it did to black teachers and black education. You look at unemployment. They say in 35 cities, 35 major cities, black male unemployment is well above 35% under Obama. 50-year low in home ownership. 50 years, he gave all the money to the banks. Come on, man. And y'all want to put up pictures of him? Black America gonna have to wake up. I'm gonna say this straight. If I look at your Facebook and you ain't got nothing but pictures of you in a bathroom, taking pictures of yourself over and over and over again, your politics ain't right. We got to get to a point where we understand, I need you to do something for someone else. I need your politics to be, it don't have to be big. It don't have to be national level. You need to be on the school board. You need to be on the local neighborhood council. Take pictures of that and put it up on your Facebook. Stop taking pictures of yourself over and over again at different angles. And start waking up to the fact that if you don't change this, if you don't wake up to America, if you don't stop looking at Skeletor versions of whiteness and deal with whiteness as systemically oppressive, it's going to overtake you soon. There's a new study that just came out that said that the middle black family in this country by 2053 will be worth zero. You can't be in America with $0. And we really are almost at zero now. We're worth $1,700 without the family car. I have that in the piece. Understand that demonizing an individual allows a whole system to escape. And I'm not with it. He's just part of more of the same, part of the same. Benefiting from the same. So continuing on with my section, yet no black pen can repaint a white lie about what happened during President Obama's 8 years on 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. Under Obama, black America suffered some of the worst years it has seen since the Civil Rights Movement. Fanfare about Barack Obama as an individual distorts many like Coates from clearly admitting to the impact Obama's administration had on African American families across the country. Under Obama, the amount of small business loans given to African Americans reached a low of 1.8%, while under Bush, black recipients were over 8% of the program. Under the Bush administration, the unemployment rate for African Americans was 10%, while under President Obama, it jumped to well over 14%. African American home ownership even dropped to nearly a 50-year low over the last 8 years. In total, the wealth gap between white America and black America grew substantially under President Obama. I have it growing by well above 25 to 30%. And understand that I would commend him, meaning President Obama, if he had done policies to close that and it just didn't work. No, he just said, hey, y'all deal with it. I'm gonna give that money to the banks. And I don't think that enough of us know enough about politics to really understand that's what happened. We've eaten this argument of individuals that are the heads of the snake of a white like racism, and we've eaten this argument that it's Republicans that kept Obama from doing so much. And I'm telling you now, you know, I've had extensive conversations from everyone from Sandy Darity, the leading intergenerational economist in the world, to Byron Allen, a billionaire who actually was there to donate to Obama at the beginning and critically evaluated Obama's presidency from an economic level well above any of our pay grades. And what I'm saying to you is that man had a lot of power for black people that he didn't use. You know, when we start looking at the executive power and the reach of it, we can look no further than DACA and how he actually reached further than we've seen before in establishing that, the Dreamers. He could have done that for black people, he didn't. So now to have this criticism of Trump and not hold Obama's feet to the fire is problematic. Continuing on, while in this mixed up place called America, we are all bastards of some sort. To be half Kenyan and half white is a different kind of mix. It is the kind of mix that allows you to create what Coates called so brazenly a nigger presidency without doing anything for those who bear the multi-generational historical cost of being called a nigger. So you start to understand that there's this vision in Coates versus the reality we all live through. There's this vision of a He-Man Skeletor fight between Barack and Trump, and then there's this reality of a continuation of more of the same. From Uber, I mean, Uber shouldn't even never have happened. The idea that 100 years of labor laws was allowed to be shook by misusing the contracting 1099 laws is atrocious, and the fact that it happened under a black president is just unthinkable. And I think that when we start to look at as I start to close up, I look at the recent news from Jamil Hill and from others and from Coates, and we got to be critical of this thing because it's dangerous. It's not saying they aren't somewhat accurate, but they're so wrong it don't matter if they're accurate. Meaning, does Trump line up with white supremacy? Possibly, yeah. But is Trump white supremacy? No. See, white supremacy is a system of oppression. It's a system. So reading my section from that part, attempts by everyone from Coates to Jamil Hill of ESPN to vilify Trump by lining him up with the label of white nationalist will not change the fact that as recently as 2004 he identified as a Democrat, nor that many notable black entertainers can be found in photo ops with him throughout the internet. From Puff Daddy, who calls Trump a friend, to Serena Williams, who danced the night away in 2015 with Donald Trump at his New Year's Eve party. Without this type of validation of the Trump brand by black celebrity, it's possible we don't even have a Trump presidency. So you start to see this reality that if we're going to hold Trump accountable, which we should, feet to the fire, Trump, Mike Pence, all of them, we got to hold Serena Williams, Puff Daddy, and even we got the new news from Floyd Mayweather basically saying Trump he wasn't that bad with the whole women crotch grabbing thing. That was horrible, Floyd Mayweather. But then we let Floyd a month ago do the whole thing where he made it out to be like a black thing, his fight with McGregor. We allowed Puffy a month and a half ago to talk about black power and black wealth. We allowed Serena Williams 2 months ago to talk about the black female payday and how black females should be paid right. These people are jumping back and forth. And I believe that the bigger fight right now is to understand that black people are struggling, that black America needs to stand up, that black America needs to become aware, and to understand that Trump is just the next in line. Well, this is Antonio Moore coming from Tone Talks. Please go to tonetalks.org, subscribe, donate, share this. Let's get the dialogue going because Trump ain't the first white president. He's just the next in line.